everybody. How are y'all doing? Good. Sorry we started a little bit late. It was that 6 o'clock class. They always causing trouble. No, I'm just kidding. We had an awesome time together, so thank you for being a little bit patient. We will allow to make up time on the back end. So I've got some great news, and that is simply that if you missed your homework assignment, you're going to have a second week to do it. But nobody needed that because you guys are always so on top of things. You won't need an extra week. But one thing that we always talk about, and if you've been on a mission trip at CBC, we joke about how it sounds a lot like K-Love, but we want to be positive and we want to be flexible. And so we had an opportunity to practice flexibility when we were given an opportunity to change our schedule for tonight. And when we look at kind of our core foundations for the MTI program, we talk about biblical framework, ministry experience, and leadership formation. So we talk a lot about leadership, but we're really given a gift in having Doctor. Are you a doctor, Pastor David? Okay, I figured that you were. But Pastor David Ashcraft is here with us. He was coming to talk to our pastors tomorrow. And so I asked Pastor Ed, is there any way we can get Pastor David to come talk to us? So let me kind of give you a little bit of his resume. He's incredibly humble, so he would never talk about this. But there's two things that, at CBC, we talk a lot about campuses now. This is a new journey for us. But when you look back at kind of the pioneers of campus ministry, the Mount Rushmore would have names like Craig Rochelle, Larry Osborne, but David Ashcraft will be a part of that as well. He, at his church, LCBC, really have pioneered and led the way for many churches to embrace a campus model. So he went to a church with 150 people, and 25, 30 years of ministry, had a successful leadership succession plan, and now they're running 25,000, 19 campuses. So for us at our church, when we're learning, there's two main churches we talk about. Hey, what does Lake Point do? How do they do it? And what does LCBC do? Because they understand systems so well. And that's part of Pastor David's heart is leadership and leadership development. So he's a big deal in the kingdom. But not only that, if you've heard of Global Leadership Summit or Global Leadership Network, he's now the president of that. And so if you geek out on leadership, that ministry and his leadership are things you need to know about and be a part of. Matter of fact, our church hosted Global Leadership Summit a couple of weeks ago, but it's just a resource because we want to be a church that helps people become people of influence, and that's what leadership is. So he's here with us tonight, and so we will we're going to pray together. We're going to turn it over to him, but then hopefully at the end maybe have some time to ask questions because he's seen a lot. He's led at an incredibly high level. At such a high level, Pastor Ed said, "Can you please come help our staff get better?" So he's a gift to the kingdom. And so we get to spend time with him tonight. So that's a really big deal. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to turn it over to Pastor David. So, Father, we thank you for the ability just to learn. God, we thank you for, God, what you're doing not only in our church, but churches all across the country, churches like LCBC that are impacting people for the kingdom. And so thank you for allowing us to be a part and to learn from how to help people know you and to know you better. God, thank you for saving us. Thank you for transferring us from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. And God, give us a passion and a heartbeat for lost people so that we can see people know you. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. So if you would, help me welcome Pastor David Ashcraft.
So Matt is very gracious in his introduction, and very cool to be here with you guys. And way to go for you. Learning and serving and leading. One of the things we say around the Global Leadership Network is everyone has influence, and each of you have influence. You're here learning how to have more influence, how to use your influence in a way that's going to lead people to Jesus Christ. And so way to go for being here and being a part of this. I thought maybe the easiest way to start is just tell you a little bit about myself. So, as Matt said, my name is David. I was actually born in Dallas, Texas. My parents were studying at Dallas Theological Seminary and went off to be missionaries in Paris, France when I was 3 years old. So, from 3 to 7, lived in Paris. Really, the first language I learned to speak was French. My mom went to take my older sister to a French-speaking school, and while I was there, the French school decided to go ahead and pull me in as well. She didn't have enough French to be able to say, he's only 3, he's not old enough, and so I started in school at 3 years old in France. When I was 7, I had a younger brother that was born there in France, born with lots of physical and just different disabilities, and so I had to come back to the United States, and my parents went back to the San Francisco area where my parents were from, and my dad started pastoring at a church in San Francisco. That started me on a journey of determining what I never wanted to be. From the time I can remember when we lived in the San Francisco area, everybody would always tell me that I was going to follow my father's footsteps and be a pastor. And so I was very determined from that point on that I would never be a pastor. Loved my dad, loved what he did as a pastor, but I didn't like people telling me what I was going to be when I was older. So I was very determined not to be a pastor. So much so that when I graduated from high school in Dallas, went off to Texas Tech University and studied business. And my intent was to actually be a lawyer. And I thought, that's a way that I can lead, that's a way that I can do things, but don't ever want to be a pastor. And it wasn't until my senior year at Texas Tech, when it came time to apply to law school, that God had turned my heart enough where I said, okay, rather than apply to law school, I applied to Dallas Theological Seminary to study theology and the Bible. Still determined not to be a pastor. I had worked in camps all through college and thought, okay, I'll do some type of camp ministry or other than church ministry, but I might as well go ahead and get some training and some biblical theological foundation to lead with, and so thought I would go to Dallas Seminary. During that year, before starting Dallas Seminary, Ruth, my wife, and I married, and so we've been married now a little over 46 years, which sounds incredibly old, but definitely my best friend, and would not have accomplished any of the things that I accomplished without Ruth at my side, and probably my biggest both cheerleader, but my biggest advisor. I, with her, am a verbal processor. And so I come home and I unload on her all my thoughts, and I just talk, and she listens to me. And then when I take a breath, she tells me maybe a good idea, maybe not. And so she has had huge influence on everything that I've been a part of since we've been married. Went to Dallas Theological Seminary and thought, okay, maybe I'll work in church, but I don't want to be a teacher, preacher. And so I started working at my dad's church in the Dallas area, worked with him for about 10 years. And when I was 32, felt like it was time for me to go and lead on my own. Started teaching some there at the church in Dallas. And one of the cool things about God, and I would say you have probably discovered this already in your life, if you don't realize it, God will lead you along, and as long as you're willing to follow, he'll keep giving you new opportunities. May not be the opportunity you thought you were going to get, may not look like you thought it was going to look, but he'll keep giving you opportunities. And as long as you're willing to go with him, he'll keep giving you opportunities. And that's what he did with me. Didn't want to be in a church, but started working in a church, gave me more opportunities. And it's kind of the whole passage of, why would God give you more when you're not even faithful with the little that he's already given you? And all of you are involved in serving in some way now. You may have aspirations for doing something much greater than what you're doing now. And I would say then the best way to get there is be incredibly faithful with what you're doing right now. Why would God give you this if you're not even doing well with this? And why would anybody here at CBC notice you for something like this if you're not even doing good with something like this? So the best way that you can serve is do what you're doing now, do it to the best of your ability, and then watch and see what God does, because he tends to open more doors. So Ruth and I, Ruth grew up in the Houston area, and we thought we were being very open-handed with God. We said, God, we will go anywhere that you want us to go to serve and to lead in Texas. Anywhere, God, wherever you want us to go in Texas, we're willing to go. And so for 2 years, we looked at different churches. We looked at probably over 30 churches is what I figure. None of them seemed right for us. And about 2 years in, we just kind of figured, okay, God, maybe you want us to stay in Dallas. Maybe you don't want us going somewhere else. Now, another part of our story, Ruth and I have 2 children. Both of them are adopted. And so our son, Justin, came to us as an infant, and we worked with an agency, Buckner Baptist Benevolences, in the Dallas area, and they had a policy that if they had one child in your home, they would work to put a second child in your home. And so we'd been waiting 3.5 years for that second child. And we had to, the one catch with Buckner was you had to live in Texas. And so that was one of the things, not just because we were obnoxious Texans that we had to stay in Texas, but we felt like that's what we needed to do. And so nothing was opening up. And I can tell you in June, middle of June, that would have been 1990, so a long, long time ago, middle of June 1990, Ruth and I kind of talked, and we were praying, and we were frustrated because nothing was opening up from a church standpoint. Nothing was happening from a family standpoint. And we finally came to the conclusion of saying, okay, God, we will trust you on this one. We will trust you that you'll either provide a second child for us in some other way, or we will trust you that we will be content with Justin and one son. If that's what you want for us, we're willing to do whatever you want. And so we finally truly did open our hands and said, God, we'll go anywhere you want us to go. Whatever you want for us, we'll do. And so 2 weeks later, July 4th, early in the morning, back then adoptions were closed, and so you really knew nothing of what was going on. And so the way Buckner would work is they'd call you early in the morning, and they said, are you going to be home today? Because we think we might have a baby to bring your way. And we said, yes, we will be home today. We canceled our plans for that day and hung around, and by noon they pulled up in the car, and they delivered a beautiful 2.5-day-old baby who became Ashley, our daughter. And God answered that prayer. And I don't know if it would have happened. I don't know how it would have happened had we not opened up our hands and said, okay, God, whatever you want, we're willing to do that. So about that same time, just about 3 weeks later, we got information about a church in Pennsylvania. Never, ever thought we would move to the Northeast. Back then, all of my friends, they would say, why in the world would you move to the Northeast? That's the Rust Belt. You don't want to live in the Rust Belt. And so why would you do that? But we felt like that's where God was leading us. And so we went to a little church called Lancaster County Bible Church. That time, a church of about 150 people. And we fell in love with the people and started serving. And I wish I could tell you that it was wonderful right from the start, and it wasn't. It was incredibly painful the first 5 or 6 years. And I tell you that just so you know that as you think about leadership, as you get involved in leadership, it isn't always going to be wonderful. And people are people, and so that means people are sinners just like you are, just like I am. And we don't always behave in the ways that we ought to behave. And so our first 5 to 6 years were incredibly painful. A guy by the name of Jim was the chairman of the elders at that time. Again, small church. And in small churches, everybody has a key to the building, especially all the leaders. And so in the middle of a meeting, about 6 months into my time at LCBC, Jim pulled out, he stood up from his chair. There were only 5 or 6 elders then. And he pulled out his keychain, and he took the key to the church off of his keychain, was very ceremonious about it, and made sure everybody noticed what he was doing. And he plopped the key on the table, and he said, obviously, you don't need me here anymore. You've got David. And he walked out. And that was rattling for me and rattling for us. He was also our worship leader, again, 150 people, but he was our song leader at the time. And so everybody noticed. 12 months later, the next board chairman did exactly the same thing. 12 months later, the third one did exactly the same thing. I don't tell you that because I'm proud that 3 church board chairmen walked out on me. I'm just telling you, it's hard. Leadership is hard, and it's not always easy. There was a guy in the church named Abe. And Abe came into my office within the first 6 weeks that I was at the church. And this was 1991. And so back then, you had to kind of battle what style of music you were going to use. It wasn't kind of universal that you could sing contemporary or songs that people would listen to all the time. And so he came in and he told me that if we didn't stop singing those, back then it was choruses, if we didn't stop singing those choruses, then he and everybody that gives to the church were going to stop giving financially to the church. And so I said, Abe, I appreciate what you're saying, but the elders asked me to come and do this. And so until the elders tell me I need to do differently, I can't change that. And so Abe went out and told everybody that he would talk to and say, don't bother talking to David. He won't listen to you anyway. And he became my biggest nemesis, where pretty much every week after the weekend gathering, he would write me a note and tell me all the things that I did and said wrong. But it wasn't just me. In Pennsylvania, back then, small country churches, our town only has about 5,000 people in it. And so a small country church, they would put little cubbies. This was before the internet. And so there were little cubbies or mailboxes on the back hallway. And so Abe would come in, and that's the way we got news out. And so everybody would go right away to see their mailboxes, what announcements were there, what news was going on. And so Abe would take the same letter that he wrote to me saying all the things that I was doing wrong, and he'd stuff everybody's mailbox with that list almost every single week. And so the very first thing is people are coming in, they're getting Abe's list of here are all the things that David is falling short on. And That kind of went on for 3 or 4 years. We were going to hire our first staff person besides me. The funny thing is, I was called the senior pastor. I was the only pastor. I was the only staff person. So I did everything. I cleaned toilets. I mopped the floors. I printed the bulletins back when we had those things called bulletins. And I did all of it. And so we were going to hire our first full-time person besides me. And we're having a congregational meeting. Abe stands up in the meeting and says, "Why should we hire anybody? Nobody can work with David." And you gotta go, "Thank you, Abe. Does anybody else want to add to those comments?" And we went ahead and hired the worship leader. And man, by God's grace, we were growing at the time, not a lot. We grew to about 600 people in those first 5 or 6 years. And we continued to work on who we are, what are we trying to do as a church, and God began to bless. At some point, Abe disappeared, and that was a wonderful day for me when Abe decided to walk away. Part of the reason why those first 5 or 6 years were so difficult is we were trying to figure out one thing. And if I were talking to a business group, but I will also say to a church group, what we were trying to figure out is, what business are we in? Everybody's got to figure that out. You have to figure that out in the ministry that you're serving in. CBC has to figure that out as a church. What business are we in? Why do we do what we do? What are we trying to accomplish as an organization? And you've got to be crystal clear as to why that is. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people that are doing a lot of work. They're going to be exerting a lot of effort, but you're not going to be scoring any goals. You're not going to be accomplishing anything. Justin and Ashley, my son and daughter, when they were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they played soccer. And I don't know if you have watched 5, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds play soccer. It's not really a pretty thing. What happens is they all know they're supposed to chase the ball. They're supposed to kick the ball, but that's about all they know, chase and kick the ball. And so what happens with 5 or 6-year-olds playing soccer is you've got this group of kids running up and down the soccer field, chasing the ball. They're grunting, they're groaning, they're kicking, they're thrashing, they're exerting all kinds of energy. But typically what doesn't happen, nobody scores any goals because they're not focused on that. They're just supposed to chase the ball and kick it. I would tell you, that was what's going on in a lot of churches, and I don't know CBC well enough to know if it's going on here or not, but you got a lot of people that are working really hard, and you as one of their leaders, you're asking them to work really hard. But if you haven't told them why they're working hard, then they're kicking and they're thrashing and they're giving it their best, but they're not scoring many goals. And as a church, you're not scoring many goals because you don't know what business you're in. And so you have to figure out, you have to know as the leader, what business are you in? Why do we have student ministry? Why do we have kid ministry? Why do we have a men's ministry? Why do we have any of this? Why are we doing, what business are we in? Now for us at LCBC, when it comes to what business we're in, we said there's 2 questions that everybody needs to figure out. And so this is ours at LCBC, but 2 things that we're talking about all the time. What are you going to do about eternity? Whether you realize it or not, whether you want to know about it or not, eternity is coming. So what are you going to do about eternity? And it doesn't matter if you even believe in it or not, it's still coming. And so what are you going to do about eternity? We believe the answer to that question is Jesus. Second question is, what are you going to do about today? How do you go about living your life in the most productive, fruitful way possible? Again, we believe the answer to that question is Jesus. Jesus tells you how to deal with eternity. Jesus tells you how to live well today. And so the most important thing that we can do as a church, the business that we're in, is to introduce as many people to Jesus as we possibly can. So the way we talk about it at LCBC, we just say we exist, introduce more and more people to Jesus, and together fully follow him. More and more. So it's important to say more and more for us, because otherwise it'd be real easy to say, okay, we've introduced some people to Jesus, and that was a lot of work, and we're done. And we have grown, Matt mentioned, so we were 150 when we started. We've got about 26,000 people that attend every weekend now. We've got 25 campuses or locations, but it would have been easy so many times to say we're done. We filled our auditorium once, we're done. Or even as you start campuses, we filled our auditorium twice or 3 times, we're done. We'd say, no, actually we can fill it 5 or 6 or 7 times, we're not done. And then once we feel like we've got a building finished, then it'd be easy to say, okay, we're done. We built a nice building. You guys here have an incredible facility for 18, 20,000 people right here. So it'd be easy to say, we're done. We're doing an amazing job. We're one of the biggest churches in the country. But I think what your leadership is saying is, actually, we're not done. We could reach more people. And so more and more tells you, we're not done yet. We can keep going. And then it's not just introducing people to Jesus, but it's saying together we want to fully follow him. Because it's not just about eternity, it's also about how do we live today. Now, one of the things, once you figure out what business you're in, and so as you're leading here at CBC, as you're thinking about leading maybe on your own in the future, you've got to figure out what business you're in. Once you figure that out, what you need to realize is that vision leaks. And people forget what business you're in. So you've got to constantly be talking about this is the business we're in. If you're in student ministry, kid ministry, young adult ministry, it doesn't matter. You've got to keep reminding people this is why we do what we do. And you could do that by giving examples of here's a life that's been changed by Christ in our ministry. That person, that's why we do what we do. For Ruth and I, that's what drove us for the last 35 years is stories of people. It wasn't the size. It was hearing different people that would talk about and say, you know what, this is what God has done in my life. This is how Jesus has changed my life because of our experience here at LCBC. And I go, that's it. Then I can keep going. I just need to know that lives are being changed for eternity by Christ. So you've got to remember. And so when we say vision leaks, you've got to constantly say it. You've got to constantly say it. It's not say it one time. If you've got kids, you can tell them one time to do something, but you also know, that probably isn't going to do it. You're going to have to tell them again and again and again. And at some point you're going, why do I have to keep telling you again? You got to do it. Used to be, the number was about 28 days, that every 28 days you've got to recast the vision. You've got to talk about, tell people what business you're in. I think that's shorter now than it was before. Used to be people would show up on average, nationally, the number was 1.6 weekends a year. Weekends a month. That'd be terrible, weekends a year. 1.6 weekends a month, the average person shows up in church. Now, nationally, the number is about 1 week every 6 weeks they show up in church. And so you're teaching them one weekend, and then they come back 6 weeks later. You think they've been there for 6 or 7 weeks. They've only been there 2 weeks. And you've got to keep recasting vision. They forget. And so you've got to constantly be recasting vision as to what's going on. Now, once you figure out your vision and why you do what you do, what's cool about it is then you can start figuring your values, who you are as an individual. Your values are the things that make you who you are, make you distinct as a person or as an organization. Your values are not the things you wish you were or you think you are, but you're really not. It's really who you are as an individual or as an organization. What you need to know, your values will rub off on the people you're serving and leading. And so if you're serving and leading in a ministry and you've got people that are serving under you, over time, all of your values will rub off on them. Used to be they'd say in church world that after 7 years, a church takes on the personality of the senior pastor. I think nowadays I'm hearing 2 to 3 years it takes on the personality of a senior pastor. You need to know that if you're leading a ministry, after a couple years, everybody in that ministry takes on your personality. And so if you don't like the people in your ministry, it's you. If you've been there a couple years, you made them who they are. And so if you want to change it, you've got to change yourself. I know that as a dad. I know that there were times that when everybody at home was cranky and they were snapping at each other, being sarcastic, and I didn't like the way they were being, I would find myself real mad at everybody else. I'd be mad at Justin and Ashley and Ruth, and if I'd stop and think about it, I would realize, wait a minute, you know where they got that? They got that from me. And if I want to change the way they're behaving at home, I've got to change the way I'm behaving at home. And so it comes down to your values. So let me give you some values. For us, there's 4. Again, if you've got 7, 8, or 9, that's too many. They're probably not all real about you. And so let me give you 4. First one is others. And as leaders, you just need to realize leading is not about you. It's about others. And you're leading to serve others. You're leading to guide others and point them more and more in church world to Jesus. It's all about others. And so it's not about your preferences. It's not about your desires. It's about what's going to be the most effective thing to introduce others to Jesus Christ. And so you constantly have to remember it's about others. Another way to talk about it is in the area of humility. It's about having enough humility to be able to recognize it's not about me. It's about others. So can I just tell you, if you look at Scripture and you try to figure out what is the one thing that incites the wrath of God more than anything else, do you know what it is? Arrogance or pride. It's not, maybe I shouldn't go there. It's not all the issues that we get hung up about today. I mean, those are issues that are real. But what God gets really upset about is pride. So much so, James chapter 4, verse 6 says that God actually opposes the proud. And so think about what that means for you as a leader. You may have great ideas of what you want to do in your ministry. You may have great ideas of what you think God is going to do for your ministry. But if you happen to be a person that's wrapped up in pride or arrogance, then you know what God is saying to you? He's not saying, I'm not sure I'm going to bless your ministry. It's not even that nice. God says, I will actually oppose you. I will stand in opposition to you. I will resist you. All your ideas, your grand ideas, your effort, all the people you get around you, I am standing in opposition to you. I'm fighting against you because of pride in your life. And I can't think of anything more terrifying than think that God himself would stand in opposition to anything I'm doing. And so this is a huge one to figure out in your life and to figure out in your ministry. It's not about you. It's about others. And be careful with pride because it definitely can destroy you and everybody around you. Second value is excellence. Excellence is just doing the best you can with what you have available to work with right now. It's not perfection. It's just doing the best you can with what you have available to work with right now. All the way through Scripture, God talks about doing the best that we can. Early in the Old Testament, God would talk to farmers and say, I just want your first crops. I want your very first crops. Bring those to me as a way of saying that you love me, that you're honoring me. I want your first crops. If it was a rancher, he would say, bring your very best lamb. Bring your very best lamb to me. And so all the way through Scripture, God was always, and still even into the New Testament, God was asking for our very best. There's actually a passage in the book of Micah where the people have been instructed to bring their best lamb to God every year, sacrifice it to him as a way of saying, God, I love you, as a way of saying, God, we're trusting you with our lives, and so here's our very best lamb. And they did that for a while, but according to Malachi, the people at some point thought, you know what, let's be smart about this. We're giving our best lamb to God. It's just going to be sacrificed and killed. So what if, wouldn't it be smart if we just get a sickly lamb? Give that to God. It's just going to be sacrificed and killed anyway. Let's give our sickly lamb to God. And it's a win-win. God gets a lamb still, so no big deal. He gets his lamb. We get to keep the best for ourselves, and so everybody wins. It's a great idea. And you know what God said to them? Don't bother. Don't bother bringing your sickly lambs to me. If that's all you're going to do, then don't even bother. Now, in church world, sometimes there's a tendency not to bring our best. Sometimes there can be an attitude of, it's just church. It's no big deal. Years and years ago, there was a guy named Paul Harvey, and I won't ask for a show of hands of who recognizes the name of Paul Harvey because it will date you very quickly. And so, but Paul Harvey was a great, great commentator, and if he were around today, he would be the top of a number of different categories in social media and podcasts. But one time, he was telling a story, and he was talking about a lady who had a deep freezer in her garage, and she was cleaning out this deep freeze. As she was cleaning it out, she came across a turkey, a frozen turkey at the bottom of her freezer. She wanted to know if this thing was still edible, and so she pulled it out and was able to dust it off, see the name of who processed the turkey. She called them and said, is it possible that I could still eat this frozen turkey? As they were talking back and forth, best they could tell, that turkey had been there for 20 years. 20 years in the bottom of her freezer. Is it still okay to eat this frozen turkey? And they asked her questions. I said, do you think that turkey's ever been defrosted? She said, I don't know. The electricity could have gone off. I don't know. They said, well, if it's never been defrosted, we think it's okay to go ahead and eat. But if it's been defrosted, we would recommend that you not. Her response back to them, and they're the ones that told Paul Harvey the story, her response back to them was, you know what? I don't know if it's ever been defrosted or not. So you know what I think I'll do? I'll just give it to my church. It's church. It's something. I mean, I'm giving God a frozen turkey. It's something. And you know what God says about you and me? When we serve him and we don't give him our very best, he says, man, don't even bother. I don't want your half-hearted service. I don't want your frozen turkeys. I don't want your sickly lambs. I want your very best. And so my challenge to you as you're serving is give God your very best. Doesn't mean perfection. So again, don't mistake that for perfection. And your very best looks different at different stages of your life and different stages of your ministry. When we were a church of 600, doing our very best looked very different than we became a church of 1,000. And 1,000 looked very different than 10,000. And 10,000 looks very different than 25 or 26,000. But every step of the way, we were doing the best we could with what we had available. You may not have all the resources you wish you had, but you can still do your very best with what you've got. And so give God your very best. So make sure what's real about you to your core is that you care about others first. Make sure that you're always giving God your very best. Third is authenticity. Make sure that as you are going about ministry and serving other people, that you're being real, that you're being authentic. Authentic just means being real. You're not playing games. You're not wearing a mask. There's no place probably on earth where people wear more masks these days than at church. We're good at wearing masks. We show up on Sunday morning and we act like everything's perfect. And everybody sits in rows next to people that just are all pretending everything's perfect. And each one of them knows, or at least what they know is they're not perfect. What I know as the pastor, because I know stories about people, I know they're not perfect, they're not perfect, they're not perfect, I'm not perfect. And so you set the tone with that as the leader. And if you always pretend everything is perfect in your life, then they're going to think, man, this isn't a church for me because I don't fit in. I'm not perfect. I can't be here. It's actually a term that's used in church world and scripture about people that are playing the game and trying to not be authentic. You know what the word is? Hypocrisy. They're being a hypocrite. And man, there's nothing that turns people away from God faster than just hypocritical behavior, where we're pretending that we've got it together. Because again, what you're saying to people is until you've got it all together in your life, you don't fit in here. We are a group of people that have our lives together. At least we're going to pretend that. And who wants to be a part of that? And so authenticity. Excellence, others, authenticity, and the last is relationships. And making sure that as you're doing ministry, you're somebody that's relational, meaning you care about other people. It's not just about others, it's not about excellence and just about authenticity, but you care about others and what's happening in their lives. You care about them enough that you're going to go to the extremes of introducing them to Jesus. You're going to go to the extreme of saying, hey, this is how God says to do life and to do it well because I care about you as an individual. And so relationships would be the fourth of our core values. And you may have different ones for yourself, and that's okay. But you figure it out, and then that's how you live, and that's who you are, and then other people come around you, and they will begin to adopt your values, or they come around you because they like your values. They like doing things with excellence. They love authenticity. They love that it's not about just you, it's about others. And so those are things that will attract other people to you because to your core, that's who you are. Now, once you figure out these four core values, then there's some behaviors, ways that you behave as a leader. So at LCBC, we would constantly, when people would come into the church, if you were going to serve at LCBC, we would talk about these leadership behaviors and say, if you're going to serve here, this is how you behave. And for you, I would just say you ought to have some of these things on your list as far as how you behave. The first one for us was pray about everything. Make sure that you're talking to God about what you're doing. Easy to say, harder to do. And I would like to tell you that I pray about everything. And yet I also, if I'm honest with you, if I'm going to be authentic, I would tell you there are times where I will make decisions, and then it's several days later that I kind of go, oh, you know what? I don't know that I even asked God about that one. I don't know that I ever talked to God about it. And so we constantly are having to remind ourselves, well, wait a minute, slow down, pray. Praying doesn't just mean talking to God. Praying also means listening to God. And what I'm real good at is telling God what I think I need and what he needs to do. What I'm real good at is saying, God, this is what I need, and here's how you can solve my issues. What's harder for me is slowing down and saying, okay, God, here's what I need. Here's what I think you could do, but I'm open to you doing what you think. And so just being quiet and listening to him. And that's a harder thing to do. But first, leadership behavior is pray about everything. Second is live a spiritually yielded life. Again, easier to say than it is to do. Living a spiritually yielded life means if I'm headed this way and God says go this way, that I'm willing to stop and turn and go a different direction. Even that sounds easy. If I'm living my life a certain way, and I think this is the way I ought to live my life, these are the things that I can do in my life, and God actually says, I don't think those are the right things for you to be doing, then living a yielded life says, okay, I'll stop doing that, and I'll go this way and follow you on this one. And it's a challenging thing, but as leaders, living a spiritually yielded life is critical for us as an organization. Third thing is work with a spirit of intensity. This one is, it's interesting all of you are here and you're in this class. I heard Matt say to you as we started the class that there were homework assignments that it was great that you did them before this, but you don't need them till next week. And some of you are thrilled to death that I'm here tonight, not because I'm here, but you're just thrilled that you didn't do the work and you've got another week to do it. And you probably felt a little bit bad about it. What tends to happen to us at school, what tends to happen to us even as we're serving at work or at church, is there are things we know we ought to be doing, we're just not doing them yet. When I was in college at Texas Tech, and every spring break, every Thanksgiving break, for whatever reason, I would put books in my car to take home with me as though somehow I was going to study over Thanksgiving or spring break. I never once studied over Thanksgiving or spring break. But every time I would go out and get in my car, I'd see the books in the car and I'd feel bad. I'd feel guilty and think, oh, I ought to be studying. And that happens even when we serve, where you think, oh, I ought to be doing this, or I ought to be doing that. I ought to call this person. I ought to reach out to them. I ought to get this job done. And we don't do it. We spend more time fretting about it. Working with a spirit of intensity means just do it, get it done, and move on. In this class, I don't know how long the assignment was going to take that you were to do tonight. Most of you probably, if you thought about it, you at least fretted about it, thought I ought to be doing it. And I would just say, man, just take the 30 minutes that you're going to spend fretting and just do it, and then move on, and you can enjoy the rest of your week as opposed to having it hang over you. And as you're serving in leadership, there are going to be jobs that you need to do, and you're going to put it off and put it off and put it off, and it's going to drive you crazy. Just do it and get it over with. For me right now, some of the hardest things are certain phone calls or people that I need to talk to because I don't want to talk to them. I've either got to tell them, you know what, man, we need to have a conversation because things aren't working well in your area, or I'm calling and asking somebody, man, would you contribute to this organization financially? And so I put it off and I put it off, and it's on my to-do list, and every day I see it, and then I move it to Tuesday, and then I move it to Wednesday, and work with a spirit of intensity means just do it. Quit worrying about it, just do it. Pick up the phone, Zoom, whatever it is, go see the person. Allocate resources strategically is another leadership behavior. My guess is, again, all of you are serving in some area. You wish you had more resources to serve with. You wish you had more volunteers, or the church would give you more people to serve with you. You wish that you had more money to buy the things that you need. But understand there's only so much to go around. And so what Matt and the leadership team and Ed have to figure out is we've got this pool of resources. We only have so much to go around. We've got to make sure that we're using it strategically. We need to make sure that we're scoring goals as an organization. We need to make sure that what we're doing is actually introducing people to Jesus and helping them fully follow him. And so there may be some of you that you're doing certain things and it's not necessarily scoring goals, or maybe there are some that are scoring more goals than you, and so they're going to have to say, man, we're going to have to allocate resources there as opposed to more towards you. And so just understand, you're only so much to go around. You've got to be strategic with what you've got. This one sounds rougher than it is. Intercept entropy at its earliest stages. Entropy is something that's dying out. It's losing energy. And it's slowly, slowly dying, and pretty soon it's just going to be dead. What we're good at in church world is keeping those dying things going. And we think, man, if we could just keep going a little bit longer. Or what we tend to do, we'll say, man, that hasn't worked for 10 years. It actually hasn't worked for 15 years. I think this is going to be the year. It's going to work this year. And you know what? If it didn't work 10 years ago, 15 years ago, then it's probably not going to work today either. If it didn't work last year, it's probably not going to work. So you need to spend time as a leader evaluating, saying, are there things that we're putting a lot of energy into? It's not working anymore, and we need to stop actually doing that. At LCBC, we've had the opportunity to acquire or adopt several different churches into our church family. And there was one particular church in the Philadelphia area that was going to become part of LCBC. And as we were talking to their leaders, they were saying the things that they thought we needed to keep doing that they were doing for many, many years. And one of the things that this church had been doing every year was what they called a peach festival. And they would, I don't know what they did, they would gather peaches, they would bake pies or things, and they'd invite everybody from the community to come and buy their pies for the peach festival. And the leadership of that church said, if they become LCBC, you've got to keep the peach festival going. And they said it would break the hearts of the people that are leading that ministry. They poured their lives into it. If you stop doing it, it'll kill those people. Got to keep going. So as we were looking at entropy, as we were allocating resources strategically, we came to the conclusion that we're not going to keep the Peach Festival going. We said we're not going to do that anymore. And we were waiting for the onslaught of all those leaders to come to us, the former leaders that had been doing the Peach Festivals for years, and be upset with us. But you know what happened? They came to us and they were like, thank you. Thank you for killing the Peach Festival. It hasn't worked for years. But we thought that our leadership wanted us to do it. We didn't want to disappoint them. We didn't want to be the ones to kill it. Thank you for killing the Peach Festival. I don't know CBC well enough to know, are there some Peach Festivals going on here? My guess is, because every big church has them, every church has them, there may be some Peach Festivals lingering here that you kind of go, man, it's not working. Let's just kill it. Let's put our energies someplace else. So intercept entropy in its earliest stages. Build relationships with God and others. One of the fallacies about being involved as a church leader is that somehow you have a strong, growing relationship with God. You may not. You can hide it, you can fake it for a long, long time. One of your responsibilities, nobody else is going to do this for you. You have to check yourself, building your relationship with God and making sure that stays current. And when leaders get in trouble is when they fake it. And if you start faking it, at some point it's going to break, you're going to break, and it's going to be an ugly situation. And so be authentic, be real, talk to somebody. Say, I'm struggling right now. Can you help me? If you talk soon enough, and if you talk early enough, somebody will help you, and they will guide you, and they will direct you. If you fake it, and then you do something stupid down the road, man, it's not going to end well. I always tell our staff at LCBC, the interesting thing is in other professions, so I'll tell our pastors this, in other professions, you could mess up in your marriage. And in other professions, you might get divorced. In other professions, you might even have an affair with somebody else. You can still keep your profession. You can keep doing what you've been doing for the rest of your life. In church world, you can't do that. You may want to lead in church world, but if your marriage falls apart, unlikely you're going to be able to continue to lead in ministry. Build your relationship with God. Build your relationship with others, the people that you're serving with, your family, the other leaders. Make sure that you're building those relationships. Be authentic. We've already talked about that. Be real. Don't play games. Nothing turns people off more from God than just being inauthentic. Recognize that life change is a process. Our tendency in church world is somebody new comes into the church, or you lead somebody to Jesus, and you instantly want them to start acting like you. You who've been a follower of Jesus for 10 years. You who've been a follower of Jesus for 15 years. Here's somebody that's been a follower of Jesus for 15 minutes. Or maybe they're not even yet a follower of Jesus. Maybe they're just curious about you and what God is doing in your life. Maybe they're not even curious. They're coming along because who knows why. And so they're sitting in church and you're sitting there stewing because they're sitting in church and you know their life. And you know what they do, and you know what they stand for, and you know who they voted for, and you know what they did Friday night, and you're thinking they shouldn't even be here. Life change is a process. They're here because God is going to use you and he's going to use CBC to change their lives, but it's going to take time. It's a process, and we all grow at different paces. Not everybody's the same. And I can't expect people that are new to following Jesus to be able to think like I think as a leader and as somebody who's been following Jesus for 40 or 50 years. It's not possible. And so understand life change is a process. Give people grace and allow them time to come in. And again, churches are notorious at almost kind of sounding like you really can't come to our church until you figured it all out. Once you've got your life straightened out, then you can come in and fit in our church. And man, if you do that, you're dead as a church. The whole reason you're here is to introduce somebody to Jesus. The whole reason you're here is to extend grace to people that aren't yet like you or like Jesus. So don't fall into that trap. Matt mentioned I lead an organization called the Global Leadership Network. And one of the things that we do is put on a thing we call the Leadership Summit. And you guys actually hosted it here several weeks ago. I hope that you'll host it again next year. It's an incredible event. We take the top leaders from around the world, and they just kind of give leadership talks. And it's a 2-day event. It's a Thursday and Friday. About 360,000 people take part in it around the world. And so we have ministry leaders, we have business leaders, but we also have people just in a variety of different ways. One of the guys that we had at the Leadership Summit this year is a guy by the name of Walker Hayes. And Walker is a country music singer. I won't ask you to show hands if you listen to country music or not. You probably have heard one of his songs. His most recent popular song is a song called Fancy Like. It's about Applebee's, and it's a real fun song. And the thing about Walker is he has been a follower of Jesus for about 6 years. He's in his 40s, and so for about 30 years of his life, he was an active, practicing alcoholic. He would say he's still an alcoholic. He's been sober for about 10 years, but he was a practicing alcoholic for 30-some years, came to know Jesus in his life about 6 years ago, and just a real fun, real cool story. And we had him at the summit, and so I've been able to develop a relationship with him. And so, again, this all goes back to life change is a process. So about 3 weeks ago, talking to Walker on a Thursday, I happened to be vacationing in Ocean City, New Jersey. So it's on the coast in New Jersey. As I'm talking to Walker, he says, "Oh, I'm going to be in Atlantic City on Friday night, the very next night, for a concert." And so as I'm listening to him talk, then I said to Ruth, my wife, Walker's going to be in Atlantic City tomorrow night. Why don't we it's only 30 minutes away. Let's go to one of his concerts. So we bought tickets to go to the concert. We're in the car, we're driving. And I start thinking, okay, let's think about this. Walker's been doing country music for a long time. And if you know country music, So he's been doing it for a long time. He's been a Christian for 6 years. What that means is he's got a whole lot more songs pre-Jesus than he's got since Jesus. What that means is he may be singing about some things that we're going to go, oh my, why are you singing about that, Walker? So we talk about that. Just say, life change is a process. Let's be careful in how we're thinking about Walker. So we get to the concert. He does some of those pre-Jesus songs. And we're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe he's doing this song. But about 3/4 of the way through the concert, he slows down, and he's got a song about Craig, a guy that led him to Jesus, and he tells the story about Craig leading him to Jesus. Tells the story about the fact that he was an atheist. Tells the story about being an active alcoholic for 30-some years. He tells about being sober for 10 years. He tells about, even though he was an atheist, Craig loved him, and Craig gave him space, and Craig eventually led him to become a follower of Jesus Christ. It was incredible. Everybody's sitting there listening to him. And you sit there and go, okay, this is what it's about. Here he is, 6 years in, and he's reaching people I could never reach. Those people would never come listen to me talk, but they came to listen to Walker, and he's telling them about Jesus Christ. How cool is that? And so we walked out of there going, yeah, there's some songs that are kind of go, ooh, I don't know that I would sing those songs. And I would guess somewhere down the road, Walker's going to go, I don't think I can sing those songs anymore. But right now, God is using him and even those songs to reach an audience you and I could never reach. And how cool is that? Understand, life change is a process. Where you are, it doesn't have to be where everybody else is. Don't stay the same. Keep moving forward, but give other people the same grace and opportunity. Possess a winning attitude. This was huge for us at LCBC. There's some people that scare more people away from Jesus than they actually attract to Jesus. And so if you tend to be a person that tends to always be grumpy and sour or critical or judgmental, then we might need to have a conversation. And I might need to say to you, you know what, you're scaring more people away from Jesus than you're actually attracting. So make sure you're checking your attitude. If we have to have that conversation, communicate truth with grace. That means I just need to be honest with you, and I need to sit down. So if Matt, again, if there's something going on between Matt and I see something with Matt that I need to talk to him about, then I just say, hey, Matt, can we get together? Can we talk? Can you just tell me about this is something I'm seeing. It's bothering me. Should it be bothering me? And I talk to him authentically, graciously, and we have a conversation. Communicate truth with grace. But you know what? That doesn't typically happen in churches. What typically happens is I see Matt doing something that's bothering me, and I tell all of you, can you believe what Matt is doing? Can you believe what a jerk Matt is? How could Matt possibly lead here when he's doing that? And I tell everybody else behind Matt's back, but I don't talk to Matt. And for us at LCBC, I'll tell you what we tell our staff. I'll tell you what we tell everybody that walks into the doors of LCBC when they come through our First Steps class. If you cannot talk and communicate truth with grace, we don't need you here at this church. There's nothing that kills a church faster than people that talk behind each other's backs. Do not play that game here. We go so far as to say, you know what? And Ruth, my wife, cringes every time she hears me say it. But I say, go run somebody else's church, but do not ruin ours. And so I would just tell all of you, figure out how to communicate truth with grace, because you will destroy what God is doing here at CBC if you talk behind each other's backs. Lessons learned real fast. What time do we need to finish, Matt? Are we about done? 8 o'clock. Okay, so let's just hit a couple of these real quick. Stay focused on what is best, not on what's good. Some of you are doing some good things. They may not be the best things, though. And you need to stop doing the good things, and you need to start doing the best things. Somebody said, and I don't remember who it is, that good is the enemy of best. And if you're spending all your time doing the good things, it may not be the best things that are going to bring you the best results. So focus on what's best, not what's good. Benchmarking. In church world, we steal ideas from other people all the time. I hope you're stealing ideas from every other student ministry, every other kid ministry, every other ministry that's going on. If you see it going well, steal ideas. Benchmarking is just a nicer word for stealing ideas from other people. So learn from others. Don't stop learning. You're doing that now. Don't stop learning. People follow big dreams, so dream big. You guys have big dreams here at CBC, otherwise you wouldn't have 20+ thousand people. And big leaders like to come and join in big dreams. And you may be frustrated with the people you've got in your ministry. Maybe you're not thinking big enough. Why would they need to get involved if it's something small? So dream big dreams. Can't please everyone, so don't try. I watch leaders all the time trying to keep everybody happy. And if you're trying to keep everybody happy, well, it means you're trying to keep her over there happy, him over here happy, them over there happy, and what happens is nobody's happy, and nobody's excited about what you're doing. So the 90-10 rule for us at LCBC, we would rather have 90% of the people wildly enthusiastic about what we're doing, and 10% can be wildly upset with us, and that's okay. And so what this does is give us permission to have people that are mad at us. And so when we were 200 people, that meant 20 people that were upset with us. Now when we're 25, 26,000 people, that means 2,600 people mad at us, which sounds like a big number, but we've never hit that yet. And the funny thing is now we'll do something and we'll get 40 or 50 emails of people going, I can't believe you did that or said that or whatever it is. And we'll all kind of get upset. And we'll go, oh no, we've got 40 or 50 emails. And then somebody at some point will go, wait a minute, 90-10. So let's see, 26,000 people, that's 2,600 emails. We've only gotten 40 or 50, so we still have another 2,550 emails before we need to worry about this. And so just remember, you cannot please everybody, and so stop trying, and you have to remind yourself that again and again. Last one, keep one eye on eternity. And this is why you do what you do as leaders. Keep one eye on eternity. When you serve in a ministry, you're going to be given a job. You're going to be given a specific task. You probably have a task or job right here at CBC now. As a volunteer or maybe as a staff person, I don't know how it works, but you've got a task that you've been given. But it's not even about that task. It's about keeping an eye on eternity. And by that I mean, let's say you work in kid ministry. Let's say you work in the nurseries, and your job is to make sure that the nurseries are supplied. Your job is to help people go through all the security checks so they can serve in the nursery. You signed up to work in kid ministry because you love working with kids. You love holding babies. Your volunteers sign up because they love holding babies, and they're excited about that. But a church this size, what people find out real quickly, you've got so many babies that are there that instead of getting to hold babies, what you spend all your time doing is changing poopy diapers. And after a while, you go, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for this job to change poopy diapers. I signed up to hold soft, cuddly babies. And I go, actually, remember, keep an eye on eternity. What it means for you to be in the nursery changing those diapers is you're creating an atmosphere where a mom or a dad can actually drop their kids off in a safe environment where they can walk into the auditorium or some other environment in the church where their lives can be changed for eternity. So keep an eye on eternity. It's not about the diapers. It is. It's incredibly important, but it's not about that. Or let's say you sign up to work out in the parking lot and you enjoy telling people what to do, and so you're out in the parking lot and you're guiding them. If you're in Pennsylvania where we are, it's a wonderful thing about 7 months out of the year, but there's about 5 months, November through March, that you're standing out in freezing rain and it's snowing and the wind is blowing and it's in the 20s or teens. Nobody's doing what you're telling them to do anyway in the parking lot, and at some point you go, why in the world am I out here? Why did I sign up for this job? And I would say, well, wait a minute, just remember, it's not even about you telling people where to go. It's about eternity. Keep an eye on eternity. You're one of the first persons that anybody's going to see as they come into your church. They're going to come in, they're going to see you smiling. They're going to come in and they're going to see you being assisting them and helping them and guiding them. You're there so that a mom, a dad, a family can get into the building. Their lives can be changed for eternity. It's not even about parking cars, even though that's important. Or let's say you decide you want to work in student ministry. And you're a man and you say, you know what, I'd love to work with 7th grade boys. Now, I don't know why you would ever do that. But let's say that's what you want to do. You want to work with 7th grade boys. You go through all the clearance checks that you need to do to work with 7th grade boys, and you're taught what you need to do. You sit down with your group of 7 or 8 7th grade boys, and about 30 seconds in, you think, what in the world have I done? And I would tell you, okay, your task, your job that you've been assigned with is keeping those boys safe in the group. Your task or job is to keep everybody else safe from that group of 7th grade boys. But what you're really doing is making a difference for eternity. Because you may be the only man that some of those boys will ever know that actually loves Jesus. So what you're doing is making a difference for eternity. So as you guys are serving here at CBC, keep an eye on eternity. It's not about the task. It is, but it's not. It's about eternity. You're making a difference for eternity. So I'm excited for each one of you. Excited to hear different ones of you talk about what God is doing in your life. You're making a difference. You have influence, and so way to go for that. And keep serving, and as you serve, keep an eye on eternity. You're making a difference. So, yeah. I'm sorry. You're one of those that has to fill in all the blanks, are you? So
That's a guardian right there.
don't stop learning. Is that it? Maybe.
All right.
Yeah. You're already doing this because you're here tonight, so I figured
Yes.
you didn't need to see that. So.
Well, Pastor David, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah.
Team, this is a gift to have him be here with us. And if you want to know more about leadership, the Global Leadership Network is a great place to look with. There's lots of podcasts available. Do you still do the Leadership Advantage?
Yeah, I also lead an organization in Pennsylvania just for pastors.
Okay. Okay. So there's podcast.
Yeah, there's podcasts.
So there's just look him up because there's lots of resources available. So I hope you were encouraged by this. I know I was. So thank you for taking the time. Next week we'll be back at the same place and we'll just pick up where we were going to tonight. So let's thank Pastor David one more time. And you guys are dismissed. We'll see you back here next Monday.